So thank you all for joining us today. And I just want to welcome you all to our Get Out to Vote webinar, where we're going to talk a little bit about what is the Railroad Commission, what's going to be our go-to steps to prepare for the primary election, which is next week, and then future opportunities for you to collaborate with Commission Shift in the future. So first things first, I do want to talk about housekeeping rules before we get started. So things we're going to talk about today is the Railroad Commission of Texas and their background. We're going to briefly talk about their website and ways for you to get involved in their open meetings, and then hone in on that Get Out to Vote piece and talk about important election dates. All righty. I do want to keep in mind that for this specific conversation, we're honing in on those topics and we're not going to talk about candidates in the election. So I would really encourage for everyone to refrain from asking political questions or questions about the candidates. However, if you do need that information, we do have our Commission Shift Get Out to Vote website where you can upload our voters guide, and also you can utilize our partners voter guide, the League of Women Voters of Texas, and they have a more in-depth voter guide with the Senate race, the education board, so on and so forth. So we do have those resources available. However, I won't be teaching you all about it today. All right. The main purpose of this specific webinar, again, is for you all to learn. And if you already know, share it with a friend. So please take the information that you have learned from us today and share it with your peers and your colleagues. I want to talk a little bit about Commission Shift. So again, my name is Portia Ray, and I am the Voter Mobilization Manager here at Commission Shift. And if you've never heard of Commission Shift, we are a nonprofit organization, and we focus on reforming oil and gas oversight by building public support to hold the Railroad Commission of Texas accountable to its mission in shifting energy landscape. I do want to highlight that we aim to educate and organize the public, specifically our Texans here, and build that support. We also aim to educate you all about the Railroad Commission of Texas, their impact, and make sure we keep them accountable for staying transparent and also highlighting like what we can do as people. And then last but not least, I do want to mention, just to clarify, that we are a nonpartisan organization. This specific webinar is also nonpartisan. So we will not be taking any stances on promoting or endorsing candidates and political parties. Things that we value is we value global energy leadership. We also value generational responsibilities, inclusive decision-making, good government, and then last but not least, you all, the people of Texas. We want your voices to be heard and your stories to be highlighted. Some areas, so believe it or not, we do have a variety of topics that we cover. Specifically for today, we're going to talk about this little box up top, educating the public about the RSC. However, if you're interested in attending future webinars, we do also have areas of our work where we focus on fixing the commission, so focusing on language access, changing the name, ethics, etc. We also highlight programs that talks about cleaning up oil and gas. So if you're ever impacted by orphan wells or waste pits, venting or flaring, we do have programs, curriculums, and materials that we provide to the public. And then last but not least, energy costs. So the moment we're all waiting for, the Railroad Commission of Texas. Before we dive into the presentation, I do want to share some poll questions with you all just to assess our audience. So if I can have SJ share our first poll with the audience, and we'll give you all a few minutes to respond.
All right, folks should be able to see that poll. Portia, do you want to read that question out, or I can read it as well?
Yeah, could you read it out aloud?
So the first question is, do you know the role of the Railroad Commission in the state of Texas? So temperature check, who's heard of the Railroad Commission and what they do?
And about another 30 seconds for you all to respond. And then SJ, once time is up, feel free to share our percentage of people who are familiar with the RRC and those who aren't.
We have a small group, so I went ahead and shared our answers here, and it does look like 2 of our 3 know and 1 does not, which I believe is better than the statistics statewide for recognition of the Railroad Commission at this point.
That's awesome. Cool. So we got some experts in the room. That's good to know. All right. And then let's launch our next poll.
This question is, I like this one. It's, let's be honest, have you been a constituent voter? So I think this is also like, have you been voting regularly? A consistent voter. I think that might be a typo, right? Consistent voter?
Yeah, consistent voter.
Okay, yeah, so consistent voter. And you can be honest, we will not tell anyone outside of this meeting.
I'm guilty of, missing an election or 2. So there's no shame. This is a safe space. But yeah, definitely, we want to highlight, have you been voting in the primary elections and the general elections and other elections outside of just the presidential election as well?
Okay, I'm proud of this group. We have consistent voters here.
All right, get yourselves a pat on the back. We're one step closer to the goal. Well, thank you all for engaging. I do want to move forward with our webinar and talk a little bit about what is the RRC, or the Railroad Commission of Texas. For those who don't know, the Railroad Commission of Texas, and I'm going to use RRC interchangeably, is a misleading name, However, there is a lot that they do for Texans, and I just want to highlight their important work. The first thing is, believe it or not, in the 1800s, they were true to their name. They were in charge of railroads and transporting goods and services across our state. However, in the 1900s, they kind of changed their stance, and then they are now kind of focused on those pipelines, the oil and gas development. So moral of the story is, the name may be a mystery to a lot of us Texans, but they have a lot to do with things that might impact us on the daily. So what you want to get out of this is that they're a regulatory agency that oversees oil and gas development. They oversee coal and uranium mining, gas utility services here in Texas, orphan wells and gas wells, venting and flaring wells as well. And then something else I want to highlight is their mission statement. So according to their mission statement, they are serving Texans through stewardship of natural resources and the environment, concern for public or personal and community safety to enhance development, and lastly, economic vitality to benefit Texans. So that's a mouthful, right? The good news is I'm going to share with you all a video to further break down the RRC, what they do, and what we can do as constituents here in the state. So one moment, I'm going to change our subtitles to Spanish for our Spanish-speaking audience, and then we can get started.
Did you know that Texas produces 40% of the nation's oil? Sounds impressive, right? But here's an interesting twist. The agency that oversees all of this production is called the Railroad Commission of Texas. You heard that right. The Railroad Commission permits oil and gas wells, monitors pipeline safety, plugs and cleans up orphaned wells, and even approves the costs you pay on your natural gas utility bill. But they have nothing to do with trains. Now you might be seeing the issue here. That name doesn't make sense. And thanks to that misleading name, a reported 58% of Texans don't know the Railroad Commission's true function. And if we look to our neighbors, you'll see that other states have agency names that, I don't know, actually tell you what they do. So why don't they just fix their name? Well, you see, the RRC doesn't actually want Texans to know what they do. They'd rather keep us in the dark on things like changing energy needs and pollution rule violations. And you think they'd be tired of the countless confused Texans calling with railroad-related questions. But the RRC just doesn't seem to care, and hides behind excuses for not changing their name, like saying it would be too expensive to pay for new stationery. We're not buying it. This confusion is good for polluting companies and bad for the rest of us Texans. But we think voters deserve the truth. Texans need the transparency to know who is controlling what first. The Railroad Commission of Texas must transform in order to meet our state and country's changing energy needs.
Awesome. I know one thing that I really want to highlight in that video is voting is a part of our identity, and it's everything we do as citizens is connected to what's going to impact us in the long run. Correct. So as you all think about what's going to come next for our primary election and general election, please note that like your voice matters, and learning about the Railroad Commission of Texas, sharing this information with your friends can help us move forward with implementing policies and initiatives that benefit your communities. So I kind of want to break down who's in charge. So first things first, when it comes to the Railroad Commission of Texas, we have 3 commissioners, and their election term is 6 years. However, with each commissioner, they are reelected every 2 years on an even year. So because it's 2024, it's time for reelection. Our current commissioners, as of today, we have Christy, we have Wayne, and Jim. And the candidate who is up for reelection this year is our chairman, Christy. And then if you want to know about their boss, we have the executive director, Wayne. As the video mentioned, and as I mentioned, as you see at the bottom, there are different things that this specific committee is in charge of. So we highlighted, they're the head of oil and gas division, critical infrastructure. They determine our utility costs. They also impact laws and regulations that affect, oil and gas as well. So that's something for us to keep in mind when we are going to the polls and figuring out which candidate will work best based off of our values and what we care about. Things I also want to highlight is we talk about oil and gas, but I want to also highlight what's going on in our state as well. So if you see here on this map, we have green sections and red sections. And in the green, those are those active oil and gas wells. If you see in the red, those are those active gas wells. So depending on where you're located in your state, you might see like different impacts that may affect your, again, utility costs, may affect different areas of your lives. So for me, I'm kind of in this area where like the gas well industry is really active, and, being in an urban community, I know my utility cost is constantly fluctuating this season. So that's something I'm keeping in mind of like, well, what's the why and who's in charge of it? It all ties together. So what we want to leave home with this slide is that there's about 255 active wells in our state, and that our commissioners are in charge of those wells. So let's talk about how they conduct business and how you all can get involved as well as constituents. So on their website, which is www.rrc.texas.gov, you will get to this beautiful homepage where you can learn a little bit more about what they're doing, what regulations, permits they're passing. If you are interested, they have open meetings scheduled every month. If you are able to be there in person, it's in Austin, Texas. If you're not, you can always watch it virtual as well. Also with that, you can just click on events, and there you'll see open meetings. Please note that their agenda is usually posted a week before the meeting. So if you're like me and you want to know in advance, sorry, it's going to be 1 week before. And things to note when it comes to their agenda is they're talking about, again, just administrative topics. They're passing permits or talking about laws that may be taken in place. And a very important piece is the N piece, public input. So again, if you want to share your story, share your concerns, we encourage you to, again, tune in live or go there in person and share your testimony so that way your voice can be heard. And again, if that is of interest of you, there are future opportunities to collaborate with Commissionship for us to prepare you for those talking points. So feel free to contact me so we can develop those resources and materials. Next, I want to highlight election dates. So here in Texas, we are having our primary election this upcoming week, next week, technically, March 5th. And on the ballot as well is the Railroad Commission election. In addition to that, we want to highlight the possibility for a runoff primary election that will be happening for the Railroad Commission of Texas, and that will be May 28th. And then a big date on everyone's calendar is the general election. I know our biggest concern will be, those big leagues, presidential, Senate, etc. But please vote down ballot as well and vote for our upcoming commissioners. So let's prepare you all for the polls. So for those who are getting ready to vote, great job. And those who aren't sure what all you need, no worries, we're going to talk about it because we want your vote to count. So first things first, check to make sure you are registered, or if you're already registered, check to make sure that your friends and peers are registered to vote. We encourage you to share the link here, which is votetexas.gov. There you can type in like your address, input your driver's license, and make sure that you are registered within our state. Next, you want to find polls or locations where you can go vote within your county. So feel free to go to your county election website, or you can go to vote411.org to figure out the nearest location for you. I also encourage for you all to get a sample ballot. Again, we at Commissionship, we created a voter guide. So we do have a list of the candidates, both Republican, Democrat, Green Party, and a liberal. And you are able to use our voter guide to take notes on, again, reflecting on your values, what you're looking for, so on and so forth. So feel free to use our resources and or also other resources out there just to know a little bit more about the candidate and just educate yourselves on those issues. So that way, when you are at the polls, you are ready to go. Next is, if you're voting the day of election, set enough time for extra travel purposes, prepare for long lines. I would recommend that sweet spot is between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. However, if you are an early voter, feel free to vote early as well. Next is, please know your rights, okay? Funny story, when I was a young voter, my first time voting, I made sure I had all of my identification. And when I went to the polls, for some odd reason, they thought I was Canadian. Maybe because I lived in Michigan, I don't know. But again, I knew my rights. I made sure I had all of my documentations afoot. I made sure I had my voter registration card and that I had all the resources I need to vote in that election. So make sure you are prepared. You are welcome to call 1-866-OUR-VOTE or visit texasvotersprotection.org to make sure you have all of those documents ready, and other issues if you want to address that can be a great resource. And then last but not least, while you're at the polls, please pause before you submit your ballot and double check that everything reflects what you want and your values. So I want to kind of pause here and talk about how you all can take action. And the biggest thing is obviously get out and vote, right? Make sure we go. Believe it or not, about 14.3% of Texans have been consistently voting. So we have a ton of people in our state, almost 30 million people, but only 14% of that bunch is actually going out to vote. So your vote matters, believe it or not, and we want you to be an active and consistent voter. Next, tell your friends. Again, if you're already familiar with what's going on in our state, tell your relatives, tell your friends, because they may not know or they may not feel like they have the power to make a difference. I do encourage you all to give your public input at open meetings. So the next one's going to be in March. SJ, if you can put in the chat the date, that'll be awesome. And then we encourage you to sign up for our email list. So I have a QR code here. Feel free to use your phones and take a picture. You can sign up for our email list. If you have any topics you want to hear more about, please input that in your email list comment section. And if you're also interested in volunteering here for a commission shift, we would love that, especially for the fall. We're definitely thinking about having voter registration drives and a candidate forum. So that'll be a great opportunity for you all to volunteer and get your community involved. Lastly, if you're already taking action in your community, we encourage you all to implement a community awareness event. So use the resources you've learned today about the RSC and host an event at your schools or within your organization, within a community meeting. So that way they're already aware of what to do to prepare for this upcoming election period. I also want to share my information. So if you have any opportunities where you want to collaborate with me for our Get Out to Vote program, my email is pray@commissionshift.org. You are also welcome to connect with us on social media. So here's another QR code for you to take a picture of. Please follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Give us a like, hashtag us, share your stories so that way we can make sure your voices are heard. I do want to open the floor for questions, so I'm going to stop sharing and give you all the floor just to have those conversations with me.